happy with the song?
I love the music. I love it. And, shout out to Joe and Kirtana for having put the whole thing together. I love
Yeah,
that. Listen.
yeah. Yeah, and looking for the right song to make Ashok dance backstage, and sometimes also be seen dancing while we are live or when we are live. All
I
right,
love it. I love it.
welcome. Uh, Good evening, Ashok. Good evening,
Good
co-host.
evening, Sham. For me, it's been what, 4 months since we stopped the show. I mean, last year. I mean,
Yeah,
you were here last week. This is my first one. Three months. Okay.
pretty much.
Seems so long. Seems so long. I missed the show. And yes,
Good.
welcome to Leadership in Flow Asia. And guess what, guys? All of you guys who have logged in, we're on season 3. Season
Yeah.
3 of Leadership in Flow Asia. So again, what is this show about? Well, this show is about getting insights from leaders in Asia,
Mm-hmm.
getting their insights and their wisdom, and looking at things from a very different point of view, and looking at how they approach their personal growth, their team growth, their organizational growth in sense, or business, results. So it's been wonderful. And this season, we're doing something slightly differently. So in the past 2 seasons, we had themes every month, but we said, hey, you know what? Let's focus on topics that interest our audience, and topics that resonate with our guests, right? And of
Yep.
course, today we have Geraldine Kan, right?
Yes.
Who's going to be talking about feedback. So tell me, Sham, how did you meet up with this lovely lady? And very interesting, why did you choose that picture? Because normally we have very serious-looking headshots of all our guests and all that, and she goes like, what's happening here?
Just don't do it don't do that.
Okay,
Impression
I
of-
shall not do that then.
So Geraldine, Jerry and I met online in a program that we were doing together called Smooth Sailing, and one of the things that struck me was that this is a lady who has made several transitions in her career. And I kind of figured there was an interesting story behind it. I didn't know. I just, trusted my instinct, my hunch, my gut feeling. And I reached out to her and asked her to join us. So, yeah. What is consistent, though, in her career is that she's always been in the space of communication.
Okay.
When she was in the corporate space, it was corporate communication. She started as a journalist. Okay, so we better mind our P's and Q's and ask good, intelligent questions, okay, to match up with her. Then moved into corporate communication in a variety of organizations across different industries. So we're going to tap on that in terms of how communication has played a part in her development. So I'm going to bring Jerry up.
Yes, please.
And as usual, that will mean that I have to just adjust things a little bit. So
Sure.
here we go. So I'm going to add Jerry here, put this here, demote myself. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, how are you guys doing? I love your music and the chemistry between the two of you.
Yeah, yes, that's one way of calling it chemistry. Yeah, we play off each other quite well. I'm supposed to say about the dress, the poster and that photo. I picked that photo. I was a bit cheeky, okay? So Jerry gave us 3 photos to choose from. One is the one that you see on her LinkedIn profile, and then there's another, and then this third one which I chose. So I chose it because it really was something different, and I said, okay, we need to position our guests a little bit differently, right? And she was quite comfortable sharing that with me. So Jerry, tell us, what was that photo about? You are on a catwalk, you know that. So
Yes, I was doing an event with the Breast Cancer Foundation, and they had 10 women do a catwalk and talk about their histories. And I met so many courageous, inspiring, and incredible women that day. I'm so appreciative and grateful that I got to do it. Not only that, the stylist gave me a look that I totally didn't expect, which was a bonus. Even my sister didn't recognize me. She's standing in front of me, texting me, looking for me. And then I walked in front of just, oh, wow, okay.
There you go. Okay. So you like to experiment, which is an interesting thing. I think it's one of the things, patterns that we picked up when we did our pre-show chat. So we're going to dive into it. We're going to start off with, let me start it off with the first question, and then Asha will take over as usual. We'll kind of between the two of us, right? So I'm very, very happy that you said yes. We were in the same program, but we had just little bits of chances to speak, but not really very, very much. So, yeah, we're going to see if we can dig out some of those nuggets from your brain and from your experiences, right? So, you said you almost defined yourself by your intellectual brain, right? All right. And it has helped you, your cognitive skills, this intellectual brain, all right? I can call it IQ, you can call it academic smarts, has helped you in your career. Let's start off with that. How has it helped you? Please share with us how it has through the years.
Yeah, I grew up in a family where grades really mattered. I mean, they really, really mattered. So if I hadn't already defined myself with intellect, other people did it for me, and I happily fell into it. Life was about getting good grades, getting into good universities, getting into good brands, and then progressing that way. So I focused on the brain stuff, knowing the business really well, knowing the craft really well, and learning how to know the competition, read the room. When I first went from journalism to tech, I had to read up from scratch. I hardly knew what a chip was. So at that time, there were still hard copy trade publications. Remember hard copy magazines?
Yep.
And we'd go to Ipoh for Chinese New Year because my grandmother, who was still alive then, was living there. And I carried this much reading material there to bone up on stuff. And it served me well. It served me well. I had to go toe to toe with the salespeople who had the loudest voice because they brought in the revenue. I was new to the industry. I was new to the function. So I had to learn to hold my own. And that's what I built my skills on.
Okay.
My
Okay.
reputation.
Your repetition, right? So it was like feedback telling you that it gave you permission to continue doing that, right? Or whatever your ecosystem that was there, was the feedback was coming back to you and saying, yeah, good results, good, you get the accolades, good results, good, you get the accolades, and that kind of reinforces the behavior of being on top of your game intellectually.
My game. And at that time, which was a very different generation, different time, that's what I needed to succeed. Because I had to be louder and fiercer than the guys or be eaten up alive, or so I thought. So that worked for years and years. I worked in New York. I went to Lenovo and set up the Asia communications function.
Okay.
And then I moved to the arts.
All right.
And that's when I realized that it was also the relationships I built and the connections I made that had got me where I was, but that I didn't exercise that muscle very much.
Okay.
And in the arts,
I'm gonna stop there. Yeah, I know we're gonna go there because I want to go just a little bit back.
Okay.
Then I'm going to Asha is going to take on the next bit, right?
Okay.
You said it was something that was the ecosystem. I'm going to use this term. The ecosystem validated or encouraged and reinforced the need to be cognitively strong, right? Yeah. Academically strong. You said it started with the family, and then you got it, and you said, okay, this was also something it was also a habit that I picked up. You yourself picked up. Why was it important for your family, and why was it important for you when it became important to you? Could you just?
I never asked why it was important to my family. It was just the way we grew up, and my mom was the oldest of 4 girls in Ipoh. And she was shipped off in a boat to boarding school as a teenager. So I think that was her context, and that was the context she passed on to us. In fact, one of her piano teachers was a nun in the convent in Ipoh. When the nun came over to Singapore, she had the nun teach me music. Trust me, it was traumatic, okay? It was very old school.
Oh yes, I went to a convent school, so I do know what you're talking about. All right, and so that's from your. Why was it important to you?
Because everywhere around me, my mother, my grandmother were like, oh, that person is so smart. That person got a scholarship. These two siblings are president scholars, grades this, grades that. So that was my environment.
Mm, mm. Thanks, Jerry. Now we go to the next bit. Ashok, over to you.
No, thank you, Jerry, for that. Because what you've just shared with us is, I think a lot of us go through that. The the narratives that we are raised with or exposed to, you know, if I had to put it in the Singapore context or the Asian context, you better study hard, you got to work hard, and that's what happened to you, But I'd like to talk a little bit also about your initial career, because you said you were facing up to salespeople and you thought you had to speak louder, right? I'd like to just go a little bit, expose a little bit in that area. What were the things that you did that helped you be successful?
It was to know the business really, really well.
Okay.
So as a comms person, I probably was an escapee from math, especially in the convent. Sham is smiling. However, when you are in a business, you have to know the numbers. You have to be able to read financial documents. You have to know how your supply chain works. You have to know what your executives are anxious about and what makes them smile. It's a business. And when you get into a room, you have to be able to influence. And the 90s, the late 90s was a very, very different world. If we treated people like that today, they would walk.
Like what?
Well, when I was in the newsroom, editors would throw stuff across the room. Thankfully, not at me.
Okay.
Me and the people who sat around me, we were determined not to be the ones that things were thrown at. So we were like, we really, really prepped.
Okay.
And when I got into a meeting in the companies, I wanted to make sure that I had my facts, that I knew what I was talking about.
So it was an away from, if you will. It's the motivator was an away from one having to experience that situation.
I guess so. I wanted to succeed. I very much wanted to succeed. And part of it is my younger siblings' influence as well. Because when I was a journalist, I'm like, money doesn't matter, it's okay, I just want to change the world. Then my brother went to finance, my sister went to advertising, and I'm like, wait. I need to keep up with them. So I had to look at the way I design my life.
Okay. So a little bit of competition in house. Okay. All right.
It's very interesting because when you talk about your initial part of the career, right? What I hear is this: what made you successful cognitively, right? I'm talking about your cognitive skills. You said you needed to know the business, what takes a business, where the numbers coming from, what are the revenue line, what are the bottom lines, what are the pressures, profits, and all that. You had to know that, and I think that's important regardless. But anyway, we'll get into that. And the other one is, you said you also needed to understand the whole supply chain, where the pressures were, right? And you needed to know how to influence people, right? And also you need to get the facts right, because you were dealing with a lot of leaders who needed to bind for your business case in that sense.
Correct.
So that's why I said you're very, very strong from a cognitive point of view in the way you approach your initial part of a career, right? And that made you successful. It's perfect. Now, earlier on, you were alluding to something about arts.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's another part of your career.
Yes.
So give us a little bit of context by what do you mean by arts, and then let me just go a bit deeper to find out what are the skills you needed there.
Okay. I then went and worked for the Esplanade, where I looked after communications and marketing communications. And what I realized was that people operated very, very differently. My CEO at the time said, "Oi, your colleagues not only wear their hearts on their sleeves, it's on their skin."
Mm.
And it was very mission driven rather than financially driven. And he said to me, "You can't use terms like KPI." So, from somebody in tech, if I don't use KPI, what on earth do I use?
Okay.
And one day I was drafting a response to a customer who was in her complaint letter to explanate, I felt was very unfair. And so I drafted the response, showed it to the CEO, and he said, you know, it's not just about the facts, it's about how you make her feel. So if you draft it like that, you will not placate her. And he said, "Hey, did you leave your heart at home but bring your brain to work?"
Hmm.
So that was when I realized that I had to build other skills. And a friend of mine had just started working with a coach, and she said, "Hey, why don't you give her a call?"
Okay.
And that's
Okay.
when the journey to self-awareness and looking deeper into how I work started.
Okay. Okay. This is very interesting. This is very, very interesting. Um, okay. So when you went to this next career, which you said is in Esplanade in the art side, what I'm hearing is the boss gave you the context in this place. Okay. Uh, the people here are driven by the mission, and that is
Yes.
important. Now,
Yes.
in your previous organizations, I believe it's also about the mission.
In my previous, I couldn't catch that.
Yeah, in your previous organization, I
Uh-huh.
believe they are also driven by mission, isn't it?
The mission is the bottom line, the top line, the growth, the numbers. As Esplanade, which I'm like enormously grateful for, because I love the arts and it's what keeps me alive.
Mhm.
The then CEO said to me, "Look, it's not just about bringing bums on seats, not just about putting bums on seats. It's about putting the right bums on seats. How do we bring the arts to people that don't normally access it?
Wow.
How do we develop an art form, make it grow enough so that the private sector can take over, like indie music, like modern dance, like theater?
Right.
How do we make sure that the groups that might not be represented in the arts in Singapore are? That's why you see so many festivals."
Okay. But when I'm hearing this, Jerry, what I'm hearing is it's still about knowing the business. It's still about the results. Yes, maybe in the previous organizations it was measured by pure numbers, you know. But here it is measured by, it appears to me, by the experience that people walk away with.
Yes,
But it's
and
still about the results.
it's about a different way of measuring results. And
Ah,
part of the results is, how do your colleagues relate to you
right. Okay. Tell me
to
a little
drive
bit more
the
about that. What do you
results?
mean by that? How was it different from the previous one?
In a commercial organization, usually if you bring in the numbers and you meet the KPIs, everybody thinks the same. Everybody
Right.
has the same measurements, the same path. At the Esplanade, there are dance people, there are music people, and everybody's slightly different. So, how well did I understand my colleagues as individuals? How well could I connect with them? That counted for a lot more as well.
Okay. So the connection is this time around is from a different space altogether, what I'm hearing.
Yes. So,
Right?
where I developed the I part of me, which is the intellectual part of me, in my 30s, or I had to, late 30s, I had to start developing the E part of me, the emotion part of me.
Okay. And that came out of the push when you the so-called push, because you moved into a different space, a space where performance is measured in a different way.
Yes, or the
Well,
success is measured in a different way.
Very nice. That's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
When success is measured in a different way.
Correct.
You're right.
Because if you think about it, Sham, Jerry was successful in her previous
Correct.
role also,
Correct.
But it's just
Correct.
that she needed to tap on different powers, her cognitive powers. That's why she talked about she needed to know a number, she needed to get the facts. But here, in the next phase, it was all about the connections. It's about understanding the mission. It's about creating the experience, right?
Yes.
Different tools, different
Yes.
powers.
Yes.
And the thing is, I think you got a sort of a wake up call, right? When your CEO said, "Do you leave your heart at home?"
Yes. And bring your brain to work.
And that was a feedback that you got at that point of time, because previously the feedback was just resonating. It was a mirror image confirming that you're on the right track.
Yes.
And here suddenly the mirror was shattered and said, "Hey, can you relook at yourself?"
Yes.
How did you take that feedback?
I realized it was also about when I'm with the people in the team, do they feel like I hear them? Do they feel like I see them? Because in the private sector, that matters a bit less, especially in the 90s.
Oh, really?
Now it's a different generation, right? But even so, the nonprofit sector is very different from the commercial sector. So it was a huge challenge for me, but it was also a huge blessing, because that made me do the painful work of looking at myself. And luckily, the coach that I worked with really, really helped me. The irony is that she was from the tech sector. She was from the tech sector in Singapore, and she moved to the US. I didn't even know where she was from at the time. It happens that she was from HP before.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so sorry, Asham, before I hand you
No,
back to you, I'm very curious here. I like the fact that there was a feedback that came to you and you said, "Okay, let me get a coach, let me do something about this." So you want to take a proactive action. But why? You could have just walked away from there, go back to an area that you're comfortable with, isn't it? You could have gone back to journalism or tech. You're successful in that. Why? Why bother?
Because I never say die.
There you go.
I would like to go a bit deeper on that.
Yeah,
What do you mean
because
by?
if there's something that is not helping me succeed, I want to find out what the heck it is, even if it's painful. And trust me, it's painful. Because asking people how they see you and what they see the gaps as, it's not easy.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you have been successful in your own ways in your previous measurement tools, right?
Yes.
And here now you got to be vulnerable, take that step, go out there and say, "What are my gaps?" And then you got to be ready to listen to that.
Yep.
Wow, how was the experience? I mean, what kept you going?
What kept me going, I think, is the attitude my mom put in all of us, which is, I don't ever want to hear you say I can't. You know how when you're a kid, you go and say, "I can't find my socks," and she goes, "Have you looked?" Until you really look for it, don't come to me and tell me you can't. And she instilled in us a determination and a need to want to look at what the issues are and go and deal with it.
Nice. Over to you, Sham.
So, can I say? And I'm just looking at my notes that I put down when we have our pre-show chat, and you said my self-expectation is high. All right. So how high is it? I'm not asking for a number. What I'm asking is, where is it right now? I mean, when you first started your career, and where it is now. I mean, are you looking at how has it? What's the ebb and flow? Is there an ebb and flow of it? And has it reduced, increased, or does it look different, smell different, taste different?
Right. I think the phrase was that my self-criticalness is very high. Yes.
Ah.
Because someone had done a Hogan assessment on me because he was getting certified. So he kindly, did one for me.
Hmm.
And yes, on the one hand, it makes me want to get better and better. But on the other hand, that's where part of the pain comes from.
Hmm. Hmm.
And more than once, I've got friends who are like, dude, chill.
Hmm. Okay. I'm seeing a pattern here. Okay, so I'm going to push it a little bit just to see whether the pattern comes through, right? So, like you said, sometimes it's that fine balance, right? The fine balance of overusing something or underusing something,
Yes, that
right?
is right. That is right.
Yeah. And I suspect, and from our conversation, I suspect you kind of tend to tilt this way where you're in the kind of moving into the overuse bit, right?
Wow, it's comfortable.
Okay. So it's comfortable because you can push it. You just don't realize that you've gone into. So, how do you realize that you're perhaps moving into that very end of that overuse space, or what mechanisms that kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
Jerry,
Uh-huh.
thinking. So, what's your thinking ping ping mechanism?
I ask people to tell me. At one point at Lenovo, I told my colleague, hey, if I'm getting too ganjiong, if I'm getting too
Mm,
agitated,
yep.
can you please let me know? And at that time, we're using Skype. So
Mm,
she'd ping me and say, hey, relax. One day, her Skype went down for some reason. And I'm seeing her jumping up and down at her cubicle. I'm like, why is this woman jumping up and down? And she's going, you know?
mm, mm,
And I've asked my sister to do that for me at home as well.
mm, mm,
And there was one time I was having an argument with my mom and my sister. After my mom like left the car, my sister, what the hell was that about? I'm like, mom started it. And Carrie said, even if mom started it, you escalate it, and
mm,
then she goes higher and you go higher. So those were those wake up calls, right? And it's an ongoing effort. Am I there
mm,
yet? No, of course not. It
mm,
never ends.
mm,
But through years and years of trying and practicing and learning and getting input, it hopefully gets easier
mm,
and I
mm,
get calmer
mm,
and I not only have a better relationship with other people, but more importantly, have a better relationship with myself.
mm. I think I noticed two things. You're not giving yourself a bit of self credit here. You said there was this life before you moved into art scene. This life was hard, right? In the term that you used, I think you said hard as, right? Your hard is the numbers, it's all the cognitive things, da da da. And then when you went to Esplanade, that's when that shift came into place, right? Two things. One is intuitively you have created a feedback. You're very good at listening to feedback, and you have made sure that you have created a feedback ecosystem for yourself, right? Like the example that you gave, you've told people to tell you when it's not sitting right,
Mm,
right? And you have created create that ecosystem. People need to be safe with you.
that's right.
So
At least I want them to be safe with me.
exactly.
When I went over to HP, I told my team, hey, because HP is also very connecty, very people oriented for a tech company. I told them, hey, I'm from
Mm,
Lenovo and IBM, so
mm,
I'm very, very direct.
mm,
That's the way I've been brought up.
mm,
And if something doesn't sit well with you, just pull me into a room. So they did pull me into a room, a couple of them, and said, hey, just now when you talked to me like that, I didn't feel comfortable. So could you please blah, blah, blah.
mm.
And one of them shook their head and said, hey, boss, you got no empathy. Yeah? You keep giving us more work. We're not like
Mm,
you, we got families. I'm like, okay.
mm,
So that was another coaching moment
mm.
where I had another coach. And when you're in a corporation, you have to go with a panel, right? So,
Yep.
and with this coach, I wanted to work on empathy. And
Mm,
after our 6 sessions, she said, look, if you really want to continue and build the skill, then go and get a coaching certification.
mm,
Not because I want you to become a coach, but because it's
mm,
a base level skills. And I do
mm.
believe that that skill in listening and connecting makes us better leaders.
Okay, good. So we'll come back to that, right? And it's just reinforcing what I have in mind. One is you listen to feedback. All right, somewhere in your system, whatever the feedback mechanism is in your system, intellectually or emotionally, but both are here actually. It's telling you you need to get feedback and listen to the feedback. That's one. Number two, even before you came to that space where the system is telling you you need to go and touch your emotions a lot more than your intellect, you unknowingly, unconsciously already had that, because you had created a feedback system in Lenovo that allowed people to say it's Jerry, a bit too much, right? Or this person jumping up and down, right? That's one. Plus, you had people who had the courage to speak up. The two things that were happening, right? So I wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to bring that out because I think sometimes we have a picture, we don't see some of these nuances that others outside see when we have conversations like
Yes,
this.
and I also realized that I didn't get where I got in IBM and Lenovo without using my soft skills, without building relationships.
Yeah.
I just wasn't that conscious of the work I put in.
Yeah, put in doing it, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, right? That balance of the intellect or the intellectual and the emotional, right? And we both know that both of these sit here, just different parts of the brain, or it's processed differently, right? Our prefrontal cortex does critical cognitive work. It also does in terms of our emotions and how we manage our emotions and process our emotions, right? But there are two different things, right? One is the heart, one is the mind, as they would say. How does this play out for you, or how did it play out for you at work and at home, right? Because if you recognize you are known, you want to be known for intellect, but here you're building this other skill. How did that dynamics play out for you at work? And
I think by that point, I wanted to develop skills. I didn't think about whether it's intellectual or emotional. If I look at it as an equation, I look at it as P, I, and E. We're made up of our physical bodies, our intellectual bodies, and our emotional bodies. And it's only when the three are integrated that we feel aligned to our values and to our lives. So if you are a certain kind of leader at work, you don't come home and become a totally different person without feeling intensely uncomfortable, and vice versa.
So you internalize it, right? It becomes part of you. You're not, yeah, you're not Jekyll in one hand and Hyde in another one, or vice versa. Okay.
I internalize, I draw, I journal, I talk to people.
Okay. Right. Ashok, you want to take it on?
Yeah, very interesting here.
Yeah, there you see, he's got a question.
Plenty actually. Because I'm looking at your journey again, right? I'm just putting it separately, as in this is where you are using your intellect, here you're using your emotions, and I can see a lot of things that is coming up from here, your experience, and you know what, it really takes a lot of courage for you to be able to say, I want feedback, and you're making it safe for them. So two things that is happening here for you is the courage, and for them is feeling safe. Now, in the midst of it, how do you then practice discernment between the feedback that you get?
Yeah.
Because that's a bit of a tough one, isn't it?
And I've learned, right? About a decade and a bit ago, I was really upset at something that one of my team members had told me. And he said, when I'm with you, I don't feel like my creative self. I feel like I've got to follow very structured stuff. And I was really upset because that was the last thing I wanted to do. So I called a friend of mine, and I think she's still at IBM. And she says to me, look, you can go and ruminate on this for 24 hours. And after that, your time is up. Get away from it. So, and then slowly I learned people have opinions. And it's really up to me to decide how to take the opinion, whether I agree with it or not, or to check with somebody and say, hey, somebody says this. What do you think?
Okay, so I see a certain process here. One is, yes, you have the courage to ask for feedback. You make it safe for people, and even when they give it to you, if it doesn't sit well with you for whatever reasons, right? You give yourself a certain time frame. In this instance, you said 24 hours, right? And then you make a choice,
Hmm.
right? Now,
Yeah.
this is where it goes back to, you said you are a whole person, right?
Mhm.
From an emotional point of view, physical point of view, intellectual point of view. I will dare say there's one more,
Mhm.
spiritual,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? That actually, I mean, if we embody all of that at work and in every place, and that's how it sits down with your values anyway. So would
Yes.
you say that that's how you make your final choice related to your values?
Yes, I think values are very, very important. And every 18 months, I go through these Posner value cards, right? Values cards, and look at what my top five are. And one of the things that's really important to me is to make an impact. And to make an impact, you have to make a greater impact, we gotta build greater skill or be better at making space for other people. So in December, I did a workshop where I kind of bond with the younger people in the room, and I realized a trend where if is a mixed group, I score better with the more senior executives. I'm like, this cannot. I was upset for like 2 days or a day and a half, and then I asked myself, okay, what are you gonna do about it? So I reworked that particular workshop and made one specifically for younger executives, so Gen Zs and young Gen Ys. And I went to two organizations who had a lot of Gen Zs and Gen Ys. And I said, hey, would you like a workshop on communication? I'll comp it in return for feedback. And so I adjusted the content, so it's a lot simpler. I adjusted the way I showed up, which is an effort to be more chill, to be more spacious. And I learned from each workshop and each piece of feedback. And I had the scores were really cool. Was I perfect? Of course not. My co-facilitator said, "Hey, there was one point where, when you're talking to this person, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I know." But we keep trying, right? We get up and keep trying.
Tell me a little bit more about the feedback. How do you design the feedback that you want? So in this instance, right, what were you specifically looking for? Is it against your four areas or
I
three? I
was,
don't know.
yeah, I was looking at how likely they are to recommend the workshop to somebody else.
Okay.
I was looking at whether they felt I engaged them and whether they felt engaged, whether what they got out of it. And I found that very, very useful. Every time before I open that Survey Monkey, my hands get cold. So am I brave? No, I don't think so. It's just something I need to do if I want to get better. And I'm so lucky I've got so many people who have reached out their arms to be with me, to help me.
To do it. I want to ask, I wanted to ask a question on what you said just a few sentences ago. It takes effort to be more, and I'm going to just leave a blank, right? It takes effort to be less. It takes effort to be different, right?
Mhm.
Why?
Because everything that's worth doing isn't easy. I,
Nice.
practicing for classical music exams, it was hell. You know, learning learning jazz, it's not easy because I have got to grow new muscles, and my piano teacher, who's in her 30s, is really patient with me. It's difficult. I see her playing it like, why does she make it sound so easy? And when I play, it sounds not so great.
Mm.
And there were points in time where I just stopped practicing until Saturday morning because my class is Saturday afternoon. And I was like, what the hell's happening? Then I read this book called Mastery, where one of the things that's discussed is when you learn a new skill, when you go up here, everything that you've learned before that goes down a bit. Then you've got to build it up again and go down a bit. And so I'm like, okay, I've just got to find a way to love doing those practice drills and work through it sounding like not great modern music.
So was there ever a time where you said, this is not worth it? This effort is not worth it?
Yes, skiing.
And why was that? Why was skiing?
Oh my God.
I mean, you got classical piano, and you're learning jazz now, and then you give up on skiing. Why do you give up on skiing?
Because I think me and gravity don't get along that well. And the last time I went skiing, I went from the chairlift to the tree. And the instructor comes and says, oh, you're going to hit your tree. So you've hit a milestone already. And my friend, who was a very good skier, he's finished his diamond, whatever it is. He comes over to me and says, I came to see how you are. I said, I'm miserable. He's like, fine, I will ski down with you. So I go behind him, and I'm just holding my skis up, and he's skiing. I'm like, oh, so that's what skiing is supposed to feel like. And I just wasn't getting into that groove. So it's not something I want to do.
Okay. And it's knowing, right? It's knowing when the system tells you this is either the cost benefit doesn't make sense to you, or it is not something that I will ever get good enough to do, even the basics.
It doesn't make me feel great. It doesn't make me feel good, so I'm done with it. However, I continue to go diving. I've got buoyancy issues. I'm not the most stable. But I enjoy it enough to continue.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. So you do have a way of making sense of what is worth the effort and what is not, right? And I think that's that's important, because sometimes in this busy world that we seem to say it's busy, and it's getting even more busy, we put equal amount of effort in anything. All right, indiscriminately, not knowing when to okay, you have to push a stop there, or this is what I need to push on to. And thanks for giving us that clarity on that, right? And how you think about it. Over to you, Ashok. I interjected.
No worries. So I've got two questions that's coming out of my mind, right? I'm going to go with the first one. Again, what I'm seeing is there is a pattern in you. You are courageous to ask for feedback. You make it safe for the feedback. And if it doesn't sit down well with you, you discern by giving maybe a 24-hour period or so. When you ask for feedback, you are very clear what you want to hear, or which areas you want to improve on. And a lot of it sits with your value. And what you said is another decision factor for you is about the impact that you make. I'd like to understand what you mean by impact and how do you measure that for yourself?
When I was in corporate, the impact that I wanted to make was to uplift the function, to bring, because communications and corporate communications are evolving so much. How could I uplift the function in Asia? How could I uplift the team? So that was the impact I wanted to make. What other impact I wish I'd made was to have a more human side, a kinder side as well. But hey, I'm a work in progress. So right now, the impact I want to make is to enable powerful conversations. And having come from the tech industry, what I want to do, what I'm doing is I'm enabling technology leaders to find their voice so that they can communicate in the business language, in the people language, and so that they can succeed and they can inspire and bring their teams along with them.
Okay. I like to tap on that one area that you ran very quickly. You said, I wish I had the human touch, right? Tell me
Yes,
a little bit more.
yeah, I was still in corporate, and once you give me a task, I'm like a, a dog with a bone, right? Okay, we got to win awards. We got to do this. We got to get it. We got to grow the team's reputation. And like Sham said about stepping back a bit, I wish I had taken more time to step back and be a better kind of human being as well, rather than being a human doing.
And that would have shifted a lot of your results.
I think I would have made a different impact on my team. I realized that I connected better with people who are more proactive, who spoke up, because that that's kind of like me, right? I speak up, so I relate better to people who speak up. What I needed to do was to connect better with people who are maybe more quiet, to make them feel heard, to give them more of a voice.
Got it. So I'm going to link back to what you mentioned just now about the book you read, Mastery, right? And about how when you pick up different skills, your it improves, but it also drops, right? And I'm going to relate it back to communication,
Yep.
right? Because that's your main key, right? So how has communication changed for you? Because you are moving up that ladder, that mastery
Hmm.
ladder also. So
Yep.
how has that changed for you in three ways? The first one, how do you talk to yourself?
Hmm.
How do you build better relationship?
Hmm.
And how it drives results. So
It
what are the
started,
improvements you've seen, and what are the ebbs and flows that you've gone through? Yeah.
yeah. It started with the realization that powerful conversations drive powerful relationships, and that in turn drives powerful results. So, how do I communicate with myself? I'm fortunate in that my coaches taught me to first listen to myself. What was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was I sensing? And to connect better with myself so that I could map the path I wanted to take to achieve the results as well.
Okay.
And same with building relationships, listen harder. And same with driving results, listen, connect, communicate, repeat.
Okay. Now I need to go a little bit deeper here, because we started off by talking about how communications, you're a communication expert, master. All right, let's talk about that. But now you're talking about powerful conversations. This is another aspect, a different aspect from communication itself. But now you're defining it very differently. You're saying powerful conversations drive powerful results. Tell me a little bit more about that. When did you get to that realization? What does it really mean for you?
Right. So my career was in the big C communications, right? It's a proper
Mm.
noun. Whereas the way we communicate are powered by our conversations. And in everything that I have worked on in building relationships, I realized that I had to be a better listener. And
Okay.
that would allow me more space to connect. And then that allows for better collaboration and driving results together.
Okay. So that is on the work that you have done on yourself, right?
And
That is your communication.
lots of people have helped me work on myself.
Yes, as we have noticed, one thing you're good at is creating that ecosystem to get this feedback, whether it's from people, from your colleagues, from your staff, from peers, anyone, from coaches, you are ever ready, because you have a very clear, your mom helped you, make sure you never say no, always be your best at what you do, your values driven in that sense. So tell me a little bit more about how has that conversations or this communication helped you build better relationships? A bit more. Tell me about those relationships and what does it mean? Then I hand
It,
you to Sham.
okay. It's helped me to listen better.
Listening. It's
And
always coming back to listening.
I would say that I still have a lot of skill to build, because in listening, we can then give other people the space to show up the way they want to show up. I'm not as patient as Sham is. I'm not as patient as my sister is, for example. So for me, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of intentionality.
What has made listening so important for you?
Because I didn't listen before.
And what happened?
Yeah, exactly. So when I started taking coaching modules,
Hmm.
listening is a basic skill. It's like you go to finance, you better know Excel, right? So if
Hmm.
you want to pass your coaching exams, you better know how to listen. And in how I train leadership communications, I use a mixture of coaching conversations as well as training. And I find that really useful because communication is a being, it's not just a skill.
Yep.
How you are is how you communicate. So how can I use that to help somebody bring out the best in them, to 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 heighten what motivates them, and also to make them realize what their blockers are and have that conversation.
I'm going to ask another question on the listening bit. Before that, let me say hi to Václav. He's on LinkedIn. We can't see his name here, but he says hi to you, Ashok. Okay, I'm very
Oh,
upset.
hello.
Yeah, he says hi to you. He doesn't say hi to me, and I just want to say, okay, I'm listening. I'm listening. Okay. What for for you? What was the biggest bounty that listening has given you? And I want you to. I want us to. I want you to share with us from a work perspective and from a family perspective. What
Better
was your biggest?
relationships,
Hmm.
much better relationships, and much better conversations at the dinner table, which is
Nice.
very important to me because my mom had this rule. She said, when we were in our 20s and graduated, every Sunday, I don't care, lunch, dinner, whatever, or, you know, you guys, you three get together and decide which meal we're having together. And that's non-negotiable unless you're traveling or,
Hmm.
something's happening, then you make it a Saturday, but it's non-negotiable. So the family dinners and the feeling we get, the feeling I get, and the feeling I bring across at those dinners is really important to me.
Hmm. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
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 Because what I'm hearing a lot of it is, thank you, Jerry, is about relationships, is about the connections. You really value that a lot. I'm going to ask one last question before I hand you over to
Sure.
Sham. Uh, you mentioned about powerful conversations drive powerful results. Now, earlier on in your career, you said you had to do a lot of influencing. I'm assuming that was a lot of conversations there too. But how is this now different?
I think I am looking at it with a wider lens,
Nice.
or I've got more tools to deal with it. One of the VPs I used to work with, she said to me, "Hey, Jerry, at your level, you need to use different tools to deal with different people. Not everything is a nail that needs to be hammered."
Hmm. Hmm.
Nice.
Okay.
Very nice. So what I'm hearing again is, again, you have been successful in both areas, right? And what I'm hearing is, you know what? We need to know ourselves. We need to know the people that we are dealing with, and
Mhm.
therefore op- improve your repertoire of tools that you have, right? And use the various tools that you have to help you survive, thrive, yeah, in the work that you do,
Yes,
right?
because the best
Nice.
leaders I've seen use both the IQ and the EQ
Exactly.
to
It's
drive
not one or
action.
the other. It's a
Yeah,
combination of both. Yes.
that's right.
Yep.
Right. Thank you. And over to you, Sha. Take us home.
All right. So this year, this season, we started something new. It's called the 1 minute question. And it's the question where Ashok and I do not interrupt you, do not ask follow-up questions, do not do anything.
Really?
Just like, yeah, no, keep quiet. Shush. All right. We give you that 1 minute for you to use and say what you need to say. To the question or the comment that we're going to make. And that will bring us home, as in to the end of the episode. So here we go. Let me ask you the question. So, share with us, Jerry, why is it that the journey to adapt, to adopt, to build, to strengthen, right? All these good things, right? Emotion based power skills. And we know that there are power skills. The technical skills are what they are, the power skills are the emotion based. Why is it so difficult?
I would like to turn the question around and answer why working on that is worth it. Because, first of all, anything that we want really badly is never easy. We have to work at it. And the greater impact we want to make, and I know every single leader wants to make a great impact. To make greater impact, we need to make sure we have greater skills. And we can only build those skills by listening to ourselves, listening to others, learning, and then connecting, joining the dots, seeing things from different perspectives, and building an ecosystem. And finally, communicating, having those conversations, whether it's with yourself or with others, with the community. And only then can we drive the impact we want to drive.
And on that note, Jerry, thank you very much for saying yes to us.
Thank you for the invite. I had fun.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I actually have another question, but I cannot because we said it's the 1 minute question, right? So
It's okay. I'll give you another minute then.
never mind, no need. It's what it is essentially is how we reframe things in our head, right? If it is going to be difficult, and I'm going to summarize what we are talking about, if you look at it as it comes from, oh my goodness, this is going to be a lot of work, then it will be a lot of work, right? If on the other hand you look at it from the perspective of this, I need this for me to go to my next step, then you take it as that. You take it as, what do I need to do that? And you have shown how you've done it in your career at the start of it, where it is right now, and how you're continuing to do that. So thank you for sharing your nuggets with us, Jerry, and sharing your wisdom. We're going to bid you farewell. And Ashok, any last words to share?
No, thank you very much, Jerry. Thank you very much for taking us through the journey and even helping our audience to understand that you need both, IQ and EQ, and it's about understanding yourself, being very clear about the values that you bring, the impact that you're making in terms of relationships, right? And therefore building the different type of skills and using different type of tools at your disposal, right? To be able to realize what is important for you. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite, and thanks for the wonderful summaries.
Right. Thank you very much. And sorry, you were saying something?
Yeah, I'm just going to move Jerry to the backstage.
All right. Jerry's backstage. Thank you again, Jerry. All right. Hey, that is wonderful, Sham.
Why, Ashok?
No, because again, sometimes we think life is so binary, right? I just love the whole journey that Jerry took us through that showed that, yes, at different stages, you need different skills, different power skills. But the most important is for you to be able to be flexible and realize what is working for you now and what is not. And have the courage to take those steps. And that's what Jerry did. She created the ecosystem where she was brave enough to get feedback, made it safe for people to give it to her, right? She reflected on it. She had certain processes in that place, right? And then she took those actions and continuously, and she says, I'm a work in progress. It's all about continuously. And it's not just related to work, but it's also about home.
Yeah.
And bottom line for her is all about that relationships that she's building.
Correct.
Through very powerful conversations. So I just love that. Thank you.
For me, it was a reinforcement of why we have this show, right? It's the work that our quiet leaders, the leaders that we call quiet leaders, do, the introspectiveness, the awareness, that work in progress, that continuous work in progress, right? That our quiet leaders do. So it's a validation of that. It's also knowing that I need to take this step. No one else is going to do it. The organization is not going to do it. If I want to develop so it's taking ownership of your own growth and own development. So I think that's very, very powerful. And on that note, I'm going to put it out there to our audience. As Ashok said this, as we started this show, this episode, that this year, it's going to be about topics that matter. And we ask you to tell us if you spot a quiet leader who you think does introspective work. They develop themselves either by reading, they love to share books, or they have got a certain take about topics that matter at the workplace today, and how they merge that and bridge that with the family, because I think that's an important part of our life, right? We are
It
so
is.
focused on work, we sometimes say work, but how does that bridge back to the family? Because the family is the thing that supports us being able to do what we do. Okay, so if you do know that, drop us a line, connect with Ashok, connect with me, or connect with Malar and tell us who that leader is. And even if that leader is yourself, right? Put your hands up. We'll be happy to have a chat with you. Thank you,
Nice.
everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you all.
We are back next week, same time, same place, and we will put the information up for you to join us sometime next week. On that note, any last notes?
No, no,
Any
no,
last?
no. I'm good. Thank you very much for everyone joining us, and see you all next week.
Okay, bye, Pasir Ris.
Bye, Siglap. Bye bye.